What's up, you guys? Long time no see with a monthly reading wrap up. I did not film one in December. By the time I was like getting around to it, it was almost mid-January, and I was like, yeah, I probably shouldn't just do this. So I combined what I read in December and what I read in January, and together with that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 books. Look at me go, you guys. So 10 books. And I'm really excited to talk about them with you guys. I feel like in December, I went through a kind of like light reading slump because, and I'll explain after I go through these, but like I went through like a pretty like light reading slump and it made me not want to read too much, but then I read a couple books that brought me right back. So that's just the way it's been working, but I'm really happy and excited to talk about all of these with you guys. I've also decided I'm no longer doing TBRs. I think if I have a TBR, it really like throws me off. So I've been like just mood reading, like whatever I feel like reading next, I just grab and I read next, and it's been kind of nice, not gonna lie. So I'm gonna start at the very top, what I read in December. So I started with Christina Lauren's In a Holidays. This was the book club that I'm in, the pick of the month of December, which I feel like was a perfect pick. This was a very cute romance Christmas with like a twist. So, God, I forget everyone's names. This is about Malin Jones, and so I'm gonna explain this and then I'm gonna kind of tell you what my connections are, clearly. So she goes with her family every year to this like cabin on a hillside in the snow. And they go every winter for Christmas time, and the family, she goes with her family, and then there's like a couple other families that like they all the families sort of like grew up together. So the other family has 2 brothers, and she like makes a mistake and kisses one brother the one night, and then like the next day she like wishes for it all to like go away, and then she gets into this weird like Groundhog Day type loop. And yeah, it's like a time loop. It's really fun. I kind of like the time loop portion of it because I feel like it adds a little bit extra to like a Christmas romance. It was a little bit more fun, and I really liked it. So it did give me heavy Summer I Turned Pretty vibes, just because of like, there's a house they go to every year. There's another family involved that has 2 brothers, and she likes the older one, but the younger one is like into her too. And it's just like, that's kind of what the vibe I got, except for this is very more, better is the word I'm looking for. I think it's more elevated. There's more of a story to it. I like the characters a little bit more. Yeah, I enjoyed reading this. I thought this was really great. I think I don't even know what stars I gave this. If you're curious, you can follow me or add me on Goodreads. I don't mind. But yeah, this was okay. I enjoyed it a lot. I had a good time reading this one. So that was like probably my favorite, I think, Christmas romance that I read so far this year. Or last year, I guess. The next one I read is, I love this cover so much. This is Just Like Magic by Sarah Hogel. This is about this girl, Betty, who she comes from a really famous family, I would say. Like her grandma's super famous, and because of that, she's really famous. And so I would say now she's more like infamous because she like went down a weird path, and like, I don't know, she ends up becoming like super broke, but she doesn't want her family to know that. So when she goes on to visit them on Christmas, she like wants to pretend that she still has money. So like the night before she needs to go see them, she like gets drunk and she starts playing her Mariah Carey All I Want for Christmas Is You record player, and somehow it accidentally plays backwards, and it summons this Christmas spirit named Hall. And it's not scary. I wish it would have been. I think I talked about how I wanted it to be scary. Yeah, it was not scary. It was not scary at all. Hall gives me such like goofy sweet boy vibes. Like, he was just so kind. But basically he can grant her wishes, and so she's like wishing for all these things to try to prove to her family that she still has money. And I'm not gonna lie, I think every single character in this book, especially Betty, the main character, sucked. I just felt like it was very like they were all trying to be showy, and Hall was great. Hall was probably the shining light in this story for me because he was so like kind-hearted and wonderful. But I just felt like Betty was really selfish, and you could really tell that throughout the book. And then the ending sort of concluded, I'm not gonna obviously spoil it, but like with something similar to that. It was cute. It was a fun read. There was definitely some parts in here that were hilarious. God, I took a picture, maybe I think, of one of the parts in the book that like had me cackling. I couldn't, oh right, maybe right here. Can I read it to you? I'm gonna read it to you. There are tears in his eyes, big and shining with lamplight. I've been all over the world, he whispers, but this is the most beautiful place I've ever seen. We're at a Cracker Barrel. Like, tell me, like this guy is so kind. Like, they pull into like an Arby's and he's like, they've got the meats. Like, it's just so stupid, but it's so funny. Like, I was like laughing out loud when reading this. I liked it, had a good time, hated Betty. That's all. That's how I feel. So here's the book, sadly, that put me into the slump. And I think it's because I read too many romances in a row. And I think that happens when I read too many of the same genres in a row, because it's kind of happening right now. I'll explain again. So I read those two. I think I read Book Lovers before that. So it was like Book Lovers. And then I went instantly into more romance. So it definitely like too much. I went into a slump. So this was one of my book of the months for December. I chose two because I was very indecisive. I love this cover. This is Kiss Her Once for Me by Alison Cochrane. This was cute in hindsight, but I was so miserable while reading this because I was just so over romance. But anyway, so this is a female-female romance. I really loved them because, okay, I loved them and hated them. So this is about, what's this girl's name? Ellie, who basically like a year ago on Christmas, she had like a meet cute in a bookstore with this girl who was super cool, super chill, and then something happened. Like, it literally like happened that day, and they just never spoke again. And a year later, she is, gosh, she's in like a weird situation. Like, this is so much, there's so much backstory to this. She's in this weird situation where she's doing this, like, she's getting married to this guy, or she's engaged to this guy. They decided on like a one-night stand, kind of like a half-drunken night, where he's like, I need someone to marry me so I can get my inheritance. And she's like, whatever, like, I'll stay married to you for a year. We're like basically friends and like friendly, so you can get your inheritance and I get a little payout and whatever. So she goes to like meet his family to be like, oh yeah, we're engaged, and his sister is the girl. So I liked it because they were both like, we're girls, we don't have communication problems, like, we can talk out all of our problems. But then like the main problem was they had crappy communication. So like, it just didn't make sense to me. I think I will read this again in the future, far future, because it's still too fresh on my mind. But I wish I wouldn't have read like 40 romances leading up to it, because I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more. I just love this cover so much. But yeah, it was okay. It was alright. It was fine. Next, my last book that I read in December was the novella in the ACOTAR series. This is A Court of Frost and Starlight by Sarah J. Maas. It's the novella. You can see my other ones are up there. They're quite large. This one's a little baby. It's like 200 pages. And I believe this is like the end of the Feyre story, the Feyre run. This was cute. Out of all the ACOTAR books, this was my least favorite because I read this after so I read a review after I read this book that basically said that Sarah J. Maas like makes you love characters and then like ruins them. And I kind of feel like that weirdly happened because like I loved Feyre through the entire series, and then at this book I was just like, do I still like her? I don't know. But I love these characters in this series. I love this series. I love the world. I loved the world building. I just didn't care for this one. I just didn't care for it. I'm really excited to read the next one because like I said, I know the Feyre like run is over, so I'm interested in reading about the next person. Like, I know who it is. I don't want to spoil it for anybody. But like, this was okay. I'm glad I read it, but I don't think I had to. Like, I really don't think I needed to. It was okay. Alright, moving on to my chunky January stack. So I was done with romance and I wanted to read something that would bring me back to not being in a reading slump. So I read my second December book of the month, which was All the Dangerous Things by Stacey Willingham. This is also the author of, I think, A Flicker in the Dark, which I need to read because this was so good. Right? It should say it, right? Maybe? Yes, A Flicker in the Dark. So she's only wrote 2 books, Flicker in the Dark and All the Dangerous Things. All the Dangerous Things is so good. It's a thriller, and it's about this, it's so sad. So it's about this woman whose son was kidnapped exactly a year ago, and she's trying to piece together, she's still like looking for him. She's trying to piece together the like pieces, obviously, the puzzle to figure out what happened, like what happened that night, how, like what, the police aren't figuring anything out. Her now ex-husband is not figuring anything out. Like, she is trying so desperately and so hard to figure out what happened the night her son was taken. And there's so much backstory with her and a lot of other characters. And she starts speaking to a man who's running a podcast, and kind of he's trying to help her unravel the story, and potentially they can work together to find out what happened to her son. And this was wild. So I really enjoyed this. It was a very fast-paced thriller. It really brought me back out of my reading slump. It was so sad and so fun in the weirdest way. I really enjoyed it. I feel like I also really enjoyed it because I felt like I related so much to the motherhood and being like, we need to find your son, like, together, and then being like, are you the problem? You know what I mean? Like, there was so many twists and turns and pulls, and it was just, it was a lot. And like the big twist at the end was like real sad, and like, I don't know, it was just, well, like, it wasn't sad, but it was just shocking, really, and it just was crazy. And I really like this one. If you're a big thriller fan, I definitely think you should read All the Dangerous Things. I definitely want to pick up A Flicker in the Dark now because I really enjoyed her writing style. So really liked this one. That was a good time. So then I came back to romance just for a second because I really wanted to read this book for the new year, and I wanted to read it in January. So I read This Time Next Year. This is by Sophie Cousins. This book was so cute. Actually, I think that's what I'm saying. I have to like get out of a genre and then come back to it, and then I end up falling in love with like the next book I read in that genre. So it's about a girl named Minnie Cooper. Love her name. And her birthday is on New Year's Day, and she's super unlucky, and here's why. Because when she was born, the exact same night, there was another baby born like a millisecond before her, and they ended up winning like the New Year's First Baby of the Year prize. Their parents made a lot of money, and that person is like really lucky and she's really unlucky. So she finally runs into this guy. His name is Quinn. Oh god, I think when they're 30, yeah, on their mutual 30th birthday, and he's super lucky, she's super unlucky, and it's just this really cute romance. Like, will they, won't they? You really want them to. It's a very incredible, like, it's a very long, incredibly long slow burn, and like almost to the end of the book slow burn, like last page slow burn. But it was so good, and like the whole, I don't know, I just feel like the whole like build-up is, the build-up's the best part, and I just think the build-up was so cute, and the backstories and the stories of their lives, and there's like in between each chapter there's like in the past, like talking about like things that happened in the past and how they like almost ran into each other so many different times, or maybe they did run into each other multiple times and they just didn't know. And it's just, I don't know, they were meant to be. That's just how it is. It was a meant to be story. I think this one is so cute. I actually really enjoyed reading this one. It's a Good Morning America book club book. It was a New York Times bestseller. Aren't most of these? I don't know, but this was amazing. This was super, super cute. Oh man, this next book, I have a lot of things to talk about. So the next book I read was my January book club pick of the month. I didn't pick it, it was just the pick of the month. This is The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. Thriller. If you haven't read this yet, you absolutely 110% need to read this. I have been telling my husband to read this for the past like 4 weeks. I'm like, please read this book. Please read this book. So I try to read like 50 to 100 pages of a book a night. So the first night I read this, I read 60 pages and I fell asleep because I was just tired. I worked that day, I was tired. So the next day, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna keep reading. I'm just gonna read another 50 to 100 pages. I finished the whole book. I stayed up till like midnight reading this thing. It was so good. So this is about, okay, so this is about Nina. She's a housemaid. She gets hired by this family to be their maid slash like nanny, kind of take care of the house. They put her in this weird room. It's like all sketchy from like the get-go, and the wife is like a nut. She's really mean, but then like sometimes she's like super nice. It's very weird. The whole situation's weird. The husband's like very kind to this housemaid, to Nina. They have like a landscaper who's constantly like, danger, danger, and she's just like, I don't get it. And then like all this stuff starts happening, and it's wild. And then there's twists and there's turns, and there's so much happening. And like, if you read The Perfect Marriage, it kind of gave me like a little bit Perfect Marriage vibes, but it was so wild from start to finish. And like Nina has like a spooky backstory kind of too. There's gonna be a second book coming out this year. I'm 100% picking it up as soon as it's released. Like Barnes & Noble, I'll be there. Paperback day it comes out, because obviously I have to have paperback because this is a paperback. I'll explain in a second about my paperback series. But yeah, this was just, I want to reread this. Like, this was so good. Out of all of these books I'm talking to you about, this is the one you need to read. This one is so good. So good. Alright, next. Speaking of my paperbacks, I read the second book in the Inheritance Game series. This is the Hawthorne Legacy by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. Final Gambit, which is the third book, just came out, and I went to the store to pick it up because I can't get it on Amazon unless it's pre-order, and stores only have it in hardcover, and all of my other ones are paperback, so I'm like, I can't mix and match. It's the thing. That's what I was basically referring to. So anyway, this is the second book in the Inheritance Games trilogy. I love the Inheritance Games. So the Inheritance Games is about this girl named Avery which I love, my daughter's name's Avery, who inherited money from this man who she didn't even know, and it's like a whole estate and private jets and charities and a football team and all sorts of things, and he has a bunch of family, and he has 4 grandsons that are just like, that's weird. But like growing up, these grandsons and their grandfather would play these like puzzles and like wild games, which is why it's called the Inheritance Games. So he like left these like clues in his will, and they're like, there's a reason that Avery got this money, I need to know. And that's what like the whole first book is about, and this is just kind of a continuation of that. I feel like it really just picks up right where that book left off, and you just kind of keep solving the puzzle, you keep kind of going with it. There's like a slight romance in there, which is always fun and exciting. A couple of twists and turns. I actually quite enjoy this book. It's YA, but I feel like for a YA mystery slash just mystery, I wouldn't say thriller, mystery, it's very good. I have a really fun time reading this. I cannot wait to read the Final Gambit. I want to know what happens. Can they stock paperback soon? Because I really want to get it. This was good. I really enjoyed that. The next book I read is The Hunting Party by Lucy Foley. This is the third Lucy Foley book I've read, and sadly I think this is my like least favorite. So I read The Guest List, which I loved. I read The Paris Apartment, which was alright, and then this was just like meh. So I really love Lucy Foley's style of writing. Each chapter is a different point of view. I love multi-POV books, and in each book something happens. Someone dies, and every single character is essentially a suspect, and you're just kind of trying to figure out who done it. This one, hated every single character. Like, I think if there's like a book where you hate every character, you're not going to enjoy it, even if the plot is somewhat good. And I will say, the plot is somewhat good. It's a good plot. It's like they're like in a scenic area, a person mysteriously dies in the hunting party, and everybody's kind of like pointing fingers, and we're trying to figure out who did it. And yeah, I just really hated this. Honestly, like I didn't like any character. The person that died, even, I was just like, okay, cool, because like that's how I felt. Yeah, this wasn't my favorite Lucy Foley. This was alright. This was not a fave for sure. And then the last book that I have to show you, this is actually a book I just finished today, and I'm still very indecisive on how I feel about it. So this was my January book of the month pick. If you're not signed up for book of the month, y'all need to. I'll put my referral link down below. This is What Lies in the Woods by Kate Alice Marshall. So this is about essentially one main girl, but it's 3 best friends who, when they were 11, the main girl was like attacked in the woods and like stabbed multiple times, and they like, it was like a serial killer or whatever, and like now they're like adults, they're in their 30s, and they're coming back together because he died, and they're coming together to kind of like rekindle and kind of, I don't know, because everyone's lives kind of fall apart after things like that. And they have like a secret about the woods. Like there's like something in the woods that is like a secret that kind of ties in with this like stabbing. It's hard to explain without giving anything away, but essentially, like, I don't know. This was just, so it's marketed as a thriller, and I will say for the first 3/4 of the book, it feels like a mystery. It doesn't feel spooky. I mean, not to me. I don't get spooked easily. Not to me. It was very mystery-esque. You're just kind of trying to go along with the main character, Naomi, and be like, okay, so what really happened, girl? Like, what are we lying about here? And the last like 3/4 of this book is very thriller, very intense. You're flipping pages quick because you want to know what's happening. You're like, whoa, webs are unweaving, things are happening, like what is happening here? I don't know. Do you know? Because I don't know. I gave this 3, I think it's like 3.5 stars for me. It was it was good, but like, I don't know. It's not what I typically like in thrillers, but it was good. I like and enjoyed it, I guess. I don't know. I feel like I'm so indecisive still about this one. This was okay. So again, all right. So that is everything that I read in December/January. I have another book that I just started. It's January 26th right now. I might finish it before the end of January, but I'll just include it in February. But yeah, that's everything I read. Kind of sad that I went through a couple of little slumps here and there, but it happens if you read, especially for me, if I read the same genre over and over and over, I tend to get bored. But I had a really good time reading most of these. I definitely think if you haven't read The Housemaid, you absolutely should go pick that book up right now. I will put a link for it down below. Y'all need to just grab that book. It's like $8. Buy that book. It's so good. Best $8 you've ever spent. Or 11, I don't know, one of the two. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Go ahead and subscribe to my channel if you're not already, and I'll see y'all in my next one. Bye guys.